Topic today is 4 steps to go from founder-led sales to a repeatable sales process. We have Max Greenwald here, who's the founder and CEO at Warmly. We'll dive into a little bit of what Warmly is and what Warmly does at the end. But Max posted a really cool LinkedIn post. Let me go out of here, actually. Posted that a month ago on LinkedIn and broke down exactly what they did to go from 0 to 100 paying customers in 2023 and the process that they used, and the 4 stages of removing him from the sales process. So resonated a lot, went viral on LinkedIn. So that was the initial impulse to do this. So we're going to be breaking this down in a little bit more detail now. And Max says he has a couple additional stuff that wasn't in the post. So, well, thanks for joining, Max. Do you want to give 1 or 2 sentences about you and then about Warmly, what you guys do, what problem you solve, just so people have some context?
Sure, thanks, Vin. So Warmly is a warm lead tool. We essentially find you great warm leads by de-anonymizing your website traffic, seeing who's changing jobs that you want to sell to, seeing who's searching about you on the web. So we get lots of warm leads, and then we automatically reach out to them for you. So we auto LinkedIn message, auto email, and auto chat, all these warm leads that we find for you. And so the outcome is more booked meetings. And so what's fun is we're a sales tool selling to salespeople. And so unsurprisingly, I'm always thinking about sales. And this year, after launching the product in last January, we saw a really, really exciting momentum, not just around the fact that our product we think is solid, but more importantly, that we're very intentional about how we thought about going from founder-led sales to a repeatable sales process.
Very cool. And I know that maybe you can share a little bit about how you guys iterated and kind of pivoted, because I don't know if you remember this, but we met a couple months ago in Berlin, actually, at a pizza party that you guys hosted at your place. And I think I remember at that conversation that you guys have been pivoting, with your startup through a couple of ideas and eventually landed now on Warmly. And it seems to now you guys really nailed it, and there's some real resonance and you're seeing some traction. So just because we have founders listening to this, so can you speak a little bit through that like iteration pivoting process that you guys went through?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually wrote a LinkedIn post on this as well. But Warmly's gone through, I think, like 8 pivots in 4 years.
Wow.
We don't stop. We've been loosely in sales tech the entire time, but we started off actually as Tinder for co-founders. So it was like a swipey app to try to find a co-founder, which is a terrible business. And we've iterated from there a bunch of times, loosely just trying to help people connect, and eventually realize that the people who want to pay us to connect are salespeople trying to meet prospects. And so through the pandemic, we built the product you see on my screen, which is a Zoom app that helps salespeople connect better by looking good professionally or better virtually on camera. That did solid and is going well, but each iteration, I think we got closer and closer toward something that can sell and be a big business. But in the process, we failed at building something that everyone likes, but no one would pay for, something that everyone would pay for, but we couldn't do because we couldn't scrape LinkedIn well at scale. Something that we were able to get junior people excited about, but because their boss was the one who'd pay for it, they wouldn't swipe the credit card, to something that works and is selling well, but it's not a massive business, to finally, we think, landing on something that is all of the check boxes. But yeah, for founders out there, I mean, it's a journey. And actually today on LinkedIn, I released the first 30 weekly updates that I ever wrote for Warmly. So these are internal updates that I only send to investors and family, but I'm going to be releasing all, I think there's 67 of them now, basically the week by week or month by month progress of Warmly for the last 4 years,
Wow.
all of the metrics, all the failures, all the learnings. And so maybe fun to read for folks that are thinking about their own journey as they go from pivoting, figuring out what they want to do, to scaling.
So I know we're going off topic a little bit, but I feel like this is super valuable for founders. Now having gone through, 8 pivots in 2 years and now landing at something that you feel like is working, what are the maybe 1 or 2 or 3 things that you feel like you've learned on figuring out like how to pick the right problem to solve, how to validate the problem, and when to decide that you need to pivot and that it's actually you pursuing the wrong thing versus, oh, we need to just push a little harder.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is that the figuring out the idea and product market fit is an art, not a science. And so what that means is I think people need to lean a little bit more on their gut and less on the data. A repeatable sales process, which we'll talk about later, is data, 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 data.
Mm.
But being the founder in these early phases where you're like, well, three people told me no and one person told me yes, like that doesn't, there's a million customers you need to get. So it's so small that like you kind of have to listen to your gut. So over time, I've listened to my gut more
Mm.
than the like data that I'm seeing in front of me. The second thing that I think is like one of my board members, James Currier at NFX, always says that product market fit is when somebody sticks their fingers in your nose and yanks you forward. And so, unless you're feeling the pull, meaning like someone's like, yes, I want this, then you probably don't have it. That doesn't mean that you're not on the right idea and that you need to just kind of tweak and iterate and kind of make it the right thing. But if you're really pushing a boulder up a hill to get anybody to buy your product, then you probably don't have a large enough problem to solve that somebody's willing to pay for. Um,
Can
but
we,
yeah, I mean,
sorry,
I
can we
don't think
dig in
there's
on
a
that
right
a little
answer.
bit? So
Yeah.
is one person enough to, put their fingers into your nose and yank you? Is it, and even there, like, is it, if they're not yanking, is it again, is it because you're just not there yet and you need to add those two, three more core features? Or is it because it's just not never gonna get there?
Yep. I mean, this is the art piece, right?
Yeah.
So Warmly's iterated in our updates to talk about how we tried to go through this. We at some point implemented a product market fit score, which was asking them a question of like, if we took this away from you right now, how sad would you be? We
Mm.
tried stuff like credit card paywalls. We tried stuff like, you know, uh, sending out a like um, a contract right away and saying
Mm-hmm.
unless there's someone's going to put the credit card down right away, then we shouldn't do it.
Right.
But again, it's product market fit. It's a combination of the product and the market. So the market, I think you can validate through probably 100 customer conversations. The product piece oftentimes takes longer because you need to sort of iterate on that product. But it's a combination of things like how much runway do you have? How many people are paying you? Um, but yeah, I think the hardest question in the world for early stage founders is the pivot or persevere. Do I try to add just one more feature or do I leave the space entirely? And I think that one of the best frameworks I heard for this was the open and close framework, which is basically like you and your co-founders say, okay, right now we're in an open period, which means we're going to take in all sorts of problems. We're going to think about all sorts of things. We're willing to pivot, whatever, but that's 1 month long. And at the end of the month, whatever we have the most conviction on, we're going to enter a close period with that, which is where for the next
Mm.
3 months, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how shitty the thing is, we're going to stick to that one idea. Like the problem, we'll stick to that one problem we want to solve and then build maybe a couple solutions or maybe just one solution to try to solve it. And then at the end of that close period, we'll open up again and say, okay, what did we learn in that 3 months? Do we want to stick with it? Do we want to persevere? Or do we want to pivot and look for other problems? And like, then that is sort of a forcing function to not be doing both at the same time. Because if you're halfway loving a product and
Right.
working on it, but then halfway like flirting with two
Wondering.
other ideas, then like,
Right.
yeah, you're not really like being able to really invest. I have a good example of a friend named Parthy who runs a great company called Letterdrop. Letterdrop sort of automates your content marketing processes, and he's a good example of the persevere. He has been working on this product for, well, he basically pivoted around a bunch and then was like, screw this, I'm just going to stick on one thing. And it's taken
Mm.
him 3 years, and he's just sat there in his filth and struggled and really pushed. And he's basically added just enough features that now it's killing it. I mean, it's a great product.
Wow.
But on day one, it wasn't really working, but he just sat there and kept iterating and building. And now, I mean, I think they're profitable. They're crushing it. And then similarly, I have, a bunch of other examples. Um, if you know the compensation planning tool Pave, the founders basically worked on one thing and wasn't working. They worked on another thing, wasn't working. Worked on another thing, wasn't working. They were willing to just drop it and try something else every few weeks, totally different spaces. And then they landed on like a landmine, right? They landed on this idea of Pave and just took off. And so it's
Interesting.
like, there's no right or wrong answers here other than like I think trusting your gut.
Do you feel like for the open and close, do you feel like there's a magical length for the close period that you should commit to that's long enough so you can actually build something meaningful, but not so long that you just, never pivot?
I think I'll give you numbers, but don't hold me to them. If I had to recommend a number, I would say 1 month open, 3 months closed, 1 month
Mm,
open, 3 months closed.
hmm.
I think it's dependent on runway and then also sales process length. So if you're doing B2B and you're selling to
Right.
enterprises, I just closed a deal that took me 18 months. And so like you're not gonna be able to figure that out. And if you're just selling the last massive enterprises in 3 months.
You're gonna be able to announce that one?
Yes. Well, one of them, we did close a deal that we can't use their logo, but there's
Oh,
another one that we'll,
damn.
we'll be able to use their logo, and I'll share that. Yeah.
Cool. What was that? Did you have that nose yanking moment for Warmly? And if so, what was that moment, if you remember?
Um, I was getting the runner. Well, so it's not just a single time, right? It's sort of like
Right. Yeah.
many times you get the nose pull. Um, but what I would say is that one anecdote that sticks out in my mind was I was chasing this prospect. Like basically, like he was saying, "Oh, let's reschedule next week. Oh, my kid's sick. Can we try next week?" And I was thinking, "Okay, this guy's not serious." And so I texted him back, and I'm like, "Hey, man, like we rescheduled 3 times. I'm just gonna call it here. Like you're clearly not serious about this. Nice to meet you. Let me know if things change." And he replied back right away, and he was like, "I am so sorry for running you around. I am serious about this. I do want to pay for this product. Please get on a call with me." And like that was
Mm,
like a pretty cool whoa moment of like, okay,
right.
like this person, I'm trying to push them away, and
Yeah.
they're saying, no, 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 like I do want to meet with you. Um, I think the other piece of it is converting design partners. This is more in the early phases. So as I talk about in kind of step one, we had the design partner program, and it was basically like it was sort of like a way to basically not have to charge a bunch of money and get customers in faster. But the sort of like repeatable piece here, or the piece that got me excited that it was yank you forward, was like more than half of our design partners said, even though this is a very early stage product, we see the future and vision of what you want, and so we will basically convert to an annual contract. So that felt
Mm,
good.
that's amazing. All right, let's jump in here. So let me boom. So core outcome in 2023, you went from 0 to 100 plus paying customers, and you removed yourself. You went from founder-led sales to repeatable sales process. Before we break it down into the 4 quarters and exactly what you did, how much of this was planned and premeditated, where you sat down and was like, Q1, I'm going to do this. Q2, I'm going to do this, versus, learning as you go along and seeing like, okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next stage type of thing.
Zero. I have no idea. I'm a first time founder, and this was all
Mhm.
completely new to me. This was entirely retroactively fit.
Yep.
And I think that for most solid companies that are onto something, like they have a good product and they'll get to product market fit, this usually takes 2 years. And so I think because we had pivoted 3 times, or sorry, for over 3 years, multiple pivots, multiple B2B sales angles, and we were selling to salespeople, I was able to short circuit this to a year. But I think most people should try to do this in two.
Makes sense. All right, here's a quick overview. Q1 founder-led sales, Q2 founder-led sales, founder sales leaders-led sales, founder involved, Q3 seller-led sales, founder involved, Q4 seller-led sales leader run. So Q1 you went
And sorry,
from
just to
zero. Yeah.
could we just go back to that for a second? I just want to like clarify that like what we're looking at here is the process over the course of a year to go from
Hmm.
me selling to my sales leader and his sales team are running sales. And so, as you can see, like founder is involved all the way until the last phase. And I think this is just one way of doing it. There are other ways and other sort of like sort of ways to move the chessboard that I think that we could talk about. But yeah.
And it also sounded like, because you just said you just closed an enterprise deal or a big deal that took 18 months. Um, is this for a certain segment, for SMB or mid market, and you're still going to be involved in like the big deals and the large accounts?
Yep, this is specifically for the SMB segment,
Yep.
focused on ACVs. Back then it was like 5K, but now it's like 10 to 15K.
Hmm.
I'm still very involved in exploring deal sizes 30 to 50K.
Cool. Makes sense. All right, let's go in here. So Q1 founder-led sales. So this was you solo doing all the selling, going from 0 to 10 customers. You want to just give some taste here of what happened? You can go through the
Yep.
bullet points one by one, or just focus on the most important things that you feel like are important here.
Yeah, so for each section, I broke down, here's how many customers we got, here's the strategy we employed, here's the experiment we ran, the key questions I was asking myself, the new tools we tried, and then who was involved. And so that's kind of the structure that we'll see over the course of the 4 quarters. And I won't read through everything. You can read the post directly yourself, but I'll sort of like touch on a couple of key things and maybe add a little more color to some of the points. So Q1, it's the early days. You have no idea what's working. We decided to go for a design partner program and founder friend strategy. So this meant like instead of like cold outreach or whatever, we're reaching out to friendlies. We're saying, look, can you just try this thing? But we knew from past pivots, it's very, very important to actually get money down. And so even though we phrased it as a design partner program, I think the smallest contract we did, again, it's for our specific thing, but I think it was like $250 a month. So whatever that is times 12 was like 3K a year or something.
Yep, 3K.
And we said, and I think one person we really wanted, we said money back guarantee. But almost entirely it was like, just like, we need you to care enough to want to pay, even from the beginning. Like I do think that's important. But maybe structure the contract in a way where it feels light and easy. I think when you get started, I don't think you should overdo it with tools. We've set up a CRM. We looked for warm intros to potential design partners. We use spreadsheets. I think you can keep it pretty simple. But the basic questions that I think any early stage founder we should ask themselves are: one, can you sell this thing at any price? That's sort of the like, do not pass go and collect $200 until someone's willing to put on a credit card. Two, can I figure out the funnel? So it's sort of just like, how many meetings do I need to take before somebody agrees to sign? Is it 2? Is it 10? That affects the size of your deal. If you're closing 1 call closes, you can get away with 3-4K deals. If you're doing 10 call closes, you need to be charging 50 grand. And it also dictates the kind of salesperson you need to hire down the road. And then the other piece that I thought was really important was the most common objection. So before you bring on someone else to help you sell, you have to be able to answer all the questions. And what's great about all objections and questions that your prospects have is that it's a hint as to what features you should build and what things you should really work on solving. And so when we heard over and over again, do you have a CRM integration? I knew that if I hired a salesperson and they said, no, sorry, we don't, they'd be losing a bunch of deals and they'd be sad. But I, as the founder, I'm like, we don't yet today, but how about you come back in 2 weeks and like, which CRM, and like, we'll see. And like, how about this? I can basically authorize like, well, it's part of the design partner program. If you sign now, we will guarantee you a HubSpot integration in the next 2 months. So it's like that kind of like, making it up as you go along, creative sales that you as the founder can do, but that a salesperson would feel very uncomfortable with. And so that's where it was really, again, like it. And the key thing here is while you have to charge money, it has nothing to do with the money. Like it doesn't matter how much money you make in this phase. The most important thing is maximizing learnings. And so if they are willing to meet with you every week, like we basically required a 15-minute weekly call, then you could reduce the price to make them feel better, basically. So I think that's sort of the summary of Q1. Any questions come to mind for you, Finn, that you want me to dive deeper on?
Yeah, when you say, can we sell this as any price point, does that mean that you tried a bunch of different prices? One person you tried to sell on $250 a month, other person you did 1K a month, and just saw kind of where that pushback barrier was?
Yep, exactly.
Interesting. And was this initial price just based on kind of gut, or was there any kind of like unit economics calculation coming in at this point already?
I definitely wouldn't recommend founders give a shit about customer acquisition cost, about unit economics, whatever, assuming that you're a software company. We have hard data costs, for example. So like our COGS is something we worry about now, but not back then. Yeah, it was really just finger in the air. What do we think this would be worth? And then, like it's a sales tool, and, we were like, okay, well, this is kind of like Clearbit. So what does that cost? Okay, like, we pay $250 a month for HubSpot. So is this more valuable than HubSpot or less? Like you can kind of have those conversations, but it was a complete finger in the air, figure it out. And then we realized the value of what we were doing. then it was easier. You can also play with price, price model. Like if you're a consumption-based service versus a
Hmm.
monthly-based service versus pay per lead versus whatever. So again, total experimentation, just mess around with it. And then the key experiment though that we worked on. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben. You had a question.
No, actually, the messaging I think is good if you want to expand on that.
Yeah. So, and maybe we can post this as well when you post this. But Kyle Porter at OpenView,
Hmm.
he has a newsletter called Growth Unhinged, and he did a little bit of a deeper dive on this post. And I gave him a
Have it here.
screenshot
Yeah,
of, oh, awesome. So if you scroll to the a little bit
this one.
lower under messaging, right there. Yeah. So this is a literal email that we sent around for our design partner program screenshotted. And so this is where I talk about playing around with the messaging. And you can see in the screenshot one messaging, and then now 9 months later, we have completely different messaging. But what
Mm,
was cool was that each email that I sent out with design partners, I was looking at reply rates based on different messages. And then also, again, talking about that like stick your fingers in the nose and pull you forward, with what sentences does that person lean in and say, tell me more?
right.
And so that was the sort of experimentation where like and I think with AI tools today, you can record all your calls and then get all the transcripts. And then basically like we use Fathom.video as our recorder. We just
Hmm.
sort of star moments where prospects were like leaning in and wide-eyed.
Oh, interesting.
And what was funny actually is those moments that we captured, if you go to our demo, request a demo form, there's a video next to it before you request a demo that is like live reactions to prospects seeing what we do. Yeah, you can pull it up on OneWay.ai and then go to book a demo. That watch video right there. These are like early snippets that we pulled from our design partner
Mm,
conversations where people were like, "Holy shit, I need this," and that
right.
was pretty fun.
That is super smart. That is super smart. So you said that both, let's go back here, that I guess both, I'm assuming pricing still changed from that point on and messaging changed. So it's not like at this phase you decided on this is going to be the messaging and this is going to be the price, but you got some signals and a ballpark that you can then have someone run with and iterate from there. So you're not throwing them in a like a blank canvas and be like, you figure out how to price us and you figure out like how to even explain what we do in the first place, right?
Yep. And then one thing I recommend to founders is like find your nearest competitor. Like maybe you don't have many competitors, but hopefully you do have some. Find the biggest one out there and go copy paste their messaging. Cause like, I
Mm,
don't know, like you look at like Drift, for example, like Drift's been around for 10 years in the chatbot space. Like they probably spent $10 million figuring out good messaging. And like one of our features is like a chatbot. And so it's like, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just like,
mm,
figuring out what works for them and then skinning it to what we do that's different, which is essentially using AI and automation to do it all for you.
right.
So like that's like yeah, like I think people should copy liberally.
Makes sense. Last question on this stage. Anything you wish you did differently if you would do it again, or if you recommend a founder to, run this?
Yep. I've implemented one new thing since then, which I do throughout the whole year now. But every time you close a customer or a design partner, that's when they're going to be their happiest. Because once they implement your software, they're going to be problems and issues, and they're going to be figuring things out. And of course, it
Right.
works, but it's like they're not going to be on the elation of holy shit, I can't
Honeymoon
wait
is
to use
over.
this, right? Honeymoon's over. And so what I recommend you do is you say, okay, thanks for signing. Can I get a 15-minute call with you to debrief the sales process and to debrief why you bought this thing?
Mm,
And when I get on that call, I say the following questions. In your own words, why are you buying my product? In your own words, what do you think my product does? In your own words, um, do you tell me about the conversations internally that you had. Who was my biggest hater? Who was my biggest supporter? Just talk to me about what happened when you talked internally. Did people like us? What were people's main questions? What were people's reservations? What were the objections that you had internally that I never heard about that they were solved? Did you look at any competitors? And then the key one that is really difficult to nail that I'm looking for suggestions if anybody in the audience or listening has ideas. But basically, what I want to get at is if I charge twice as much, would you have paid? And when I
Mm.
ask that question, everyone's like, no, because they don't want me to charge them twice as much. And I've gotten around that by saying, like, you know, uh, how big is your budget? Or like, are there any other tools that you use that you pay more for than Warmly? Do you think they provide more value than us? Like that kind of stuff. So I haven't really cracked it yet. A couple people have basically, bigger companies have like been like, yeah, honestly, like we would have paid 5K more. But I think that's one way to like really understand the insider scoop of pricing. Or phrases like, look, I'm never going to charge you more. You're my buddy. Like, you know, we're really excited to work together, but like I need to make a big profitable business. What is your recommendation to get to being able to charge twice as much? And if they say you can charge twice as much right now, then that's good information. Or if they say, well, if you replace this tool for us or you had this integration or whatever, then we pay more, then that's good learning. So
I'm curious, like my idea is because it's always like people, what they say and what they do are two separate things. So what if you
yeah,
literally say, hey, thank you for buying. By the way, we changed our pricing starting next month. We're going to charge double. And I just want to make sure that you're okay with that. So we sign you up on that trial on that product, like literally put them on the spot. And then if they're like, okay, we'll do it. Then you can be like, yeah, I'm kidding, you know, or whatever. Like this was, we're not gonna change the price, but thank you so much. I'm really happy to hear that. Like literally put them on the spot to kind of make a sales decision, I guess. It's comfortable,
I
uncomfortable
like that.
also. So, um, yeah, I love the question that before the questions that you ask of like in your words, why did you buy us, etc. Do you have any? Is it literally you record the call, you take notes, and then like qualitatively you're like, oh, I keep hearing this, so we should do this, or do you have any kinds of process driven, documentation driven, quantitative way to do that, or is it is it just kind of listening and intuition and then seeing patterns?
It's a great question. I don't really just I take the recording, I take notes, and then I basically write up a post, and then I post internally in our Slack, and I say,
Mm,
you know, at product team, 3 pieces of product feedback, at sales team, 3 pieces of sales feedback, stuff like that.
makes sense. All right, let's move on
Oh, and
to
sorry,
yeah.
one last question that I asked, which is killer, is how could we have shortened this sales cycle in half? So basically, what
Mm,
could we have done to get you to sign twice as fast? Because cutting down your sales cycle time is a good exercise.
yeah, interesting. Super cool. Q2, sales leader led, founder involved. You went from 10 to 30 customers. Tell me about kind of what sticks out here. What do you feel what was most important of what you guys did?
So a lot of common wisdom is like founders should get to 500,000 in ARR, maybe even 100 customers before hiring any salespeople. I think that makes sense for things like dev tools. So don't like anchor on the number of customers. Because we sell a sales tool to salespeople, I was feeling comfortable knowing that a salesperson would be able to
Mm,
quickly ramp up and sell this thing. But here's where the first split happens. And by the way, I just want to be clear. In Q1, we had a BDR. So it was my founder and I, or my co-founder and I, and then we used the BDR to help us generate meetings and stuff like that. And
mhm,
he had been working with us through a prior pivot. You don't need to do that. It's just like it helped. And then our sales leader, Keegan, he came like by chance. Like we weren't expecting or needing to hire him. We had a advisor who was like, this guy's incredible. Like just give him an interview. And I was so impressed that I was like, let's take a risk here.
mm,
But I think it's also reasonable in this sort of second phase to just have a couple of BDRs to help, or hire a junior AE to report to you to figure it out. So there's no obvious answer, but we if you have a good sales leader, then like it's great because this person Keegan, he's a revenue operations guy as well, and so he was able to build out a bunch of our connections between tools and to help us figure out a lot of like automation and sequencing and sort of like combining everything together and really set us up for a future under which salespeople would thrive. And so key things from here that I really think that every founder needs to think about is like whether you have an in-house person or you hire an agency like for HubSpot, you do need someone to set you up to scale because there's a lot of behind the scenes shit that you need to get going and think about to be able to figure out, okay, when I create a new deal in HubSpot, what are my stages of my funnel? What are the like tags that we can put in? What are the like measurements? You know, what are the inbound channels? How long is my sales cycle? Like these are all things you don't need in Q2 or in phase two, but you need them in the repeatable sales process phase. Because now I have these great dashboards that Keegan set up that I can look at and say, okay, how long are my sales cycles, which reps are performing the best, how many sales qualified opportunities are they generating from what number of meetings, do we need to tighten our ICP or open our YCP, stuff like that. And so I think early setup of HubSpot is really important.
So what do you recommend? Let it the sales leader do? Do you do it yourself? Do you hire like what is that, like a RevOps agency, or what do
I
you
think
recommend?
most people need to hire a RevOps agency for this.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, if you have an in-house RevOps person, great. And you can tinker with something yourself if you want, like a basic funnel and sort of like basic analysis. But you definitely want to hire a full-time RevOps person. And so either your sales leader is RevOps focused or RevOpsy, we got lucky ours was, or you hire a RevOps agency like from HubSpot has like 1 million agencies, and most of them are pretty solid.
I feel like Austin is a RevOps person. You just gave the thumbs up when you said that. Austin, are you a RevOps person? Um, Interesting. So, yep, another thumbs up. So we got a RevOps in here. If
Nice.
you are still working out, Austin, otherwise it might be interesting to hear your POV maybe at the end. Um, Anything else here that you want to point out in terms of the tools that you guys decided to add to it, or why LinkedIn sequencing, maybe?
I want to Yeah, so I want to talk about the idea of finding channels that work. And so let's first talk about outbound and then inbound. So
Mhm.
outbound is what typically no one's ever heard of your company. It's the beginning days. So you need to generate demand yourself by going outbound. And the classic channels that people, will try are cold calling, cold emailing, LinkedIn messaging, conferences, whatever, like stuff like that. Newsletter, sorry, uh, mail, whatever. Uh, and so generating demand, big experiment per phase or per quarter. And so from Q1, we had the greatest hunch that a lot of salespeople lived on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn would be a good place to go reach out to them. And it turned out to be right. And so that's why we focused on the big experiment being LinkedIn. The other shift from the first phase to the second phase is going from manual, like one-off emails that I'm like tweaking all the time, to starting to try sequences. So
Mm.
making 10-step sequences that pre-address some of the objections that we had heard from the first quarter, and then experimenting and tinkering with those to figure out reply rates and stuff like that. But really just sort of like going more quantity, going from quality to like quantity. And then in later phases, we do quality and quantity. But um, we thought LinkedIn sequencing would be pretty cool, and basically just automating outreach to folks, prospects via LinkedIn, to see if they wanted to reach out and connect, was an experiment that ended up working really well for us.
Do you use Lemlist, or what did you use for that?
We use Salesflow,
Mm.
and I think we talk about this down there. We have a direct integration with them now through Warmly, and so through Warmly, you can actually take your warm leads and automatically LinkedIn sequence them.
Interesting. Now I'm curious, you said for the transition to go from the first phase to the second phase happens at the suspiciously around number of 10. And you kind of said that don't get too fixated on the number. What was 10 just because at that point you randomly got introduced to Keegan and he was such a great fit and you were impressed that you were like, okay, I want to challenge this guy. I want to see if we can do it? Or was there any other signals that you saw at phase one that you felt like, okay, we're ready to kind of start removing yourself a little bit from the process?
It was more about quota. So it was, yeah, I wouldn't anchor on the exact number of 10, but it was like one day for this repeatable sales motion to work, I need my sales reps to close at least 3 times more than I'm paying them. So
Mhm.
I guess in the heyday of SaaS, it was more like a 5-to-1 sales to seller ratio, where it was like you pay them, including quota and full commission. It's like 125K a year. So like you want them to close. I think it's like 625. But I think today the 3-to-1 is solid. Obviously, if you're shooting for 4-to-1, but I was basically roughly in my head saying I need to close about $600,000 of ARR per year. And so in Q1, I'd closed about 150K of ARR. And so I was like, okay, well, if I can like roughly get to quota myself, then I can basically say to Keegan, can you close 150K? Because you're a leader, right? Like you're somebody who can manage people. You're a really, really good salesperson. And if you can close 150K of ARR, then we're like, okay, maybe we should then hire a person to see if they can. And I think it's one of those
Mm,
things where like at any phase along the journey, if you're not there, don't move on to the next phase. Like if Keegan's first quarter, he had closed 30, well, I mean, you have to factor in ramp. So it's like, give him a month to ramp up where you assume zero. And then in the second and third month, second month is like 75% of quota, and then third month full quota. Um, can he close enough deals? If that's the case, then great. Pass go, collect $200, move on to the next. If not, it's not a problem. It doesn't mean your company sucks. It doesn't mean you haven't figured it out. It just means you need to sit where you are and figure out your stuff. Because what you don't want to do is hire a bunch of salespeople and have everything fall flat on its face. And you fire a bunch of people and it's like, you're really screwed. I think what I've learned is that you don't want to take on too many experiments at the same time, because then you're not sure what's broken. So imagine if I had
mm,
hired 3 AEs, 2 SDRs, a sales leader, and we hadn't had product market fit. Then all of a sudden, a quarter in, it's like we have some sales, some of our salespeople suck, some are good. Is our messaging any good? Like you're just puzzled about like,
right.
what do I need to change to fix? But when you do things iteratively and you have one experiment at a time, then you're able to say if something is wrong, then let's spend a few months solving that problem. And if we can't solve it, then that's a big danger for the company. But if, given 6 months, you can eventually solve the problem of let's get that sales leader to quota, then great, have them hire a person. It doesn't mean they're bad either. It just means you have stuff to figure out.
How did you, what was the process to communicate everything that you know and that you learned to Keegan? Was it like a weekly call? Did you write down like a massive, like, here's the messaging Bible of everything that worked? What was the process?
We spent a lot of time in person together. We're a remote company, but I flew him out to see me a couple of times and we met up in person. And obviously, in person is really good. And I think typical, or at least for us, a remote company, any new hire, we immediately fly to go meet with their, we call them warm leaders, but it's basically like manager, for at least a week right when they start. We give them a week
Mm,
to ramp to onboard and like just do the basics. And then the next week they fly out in person to see us. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really have much documentation. I feel like he and I had to build it together. Um, and then it was sort of like sink or swim. I mean, that's the fun of being a first sales leader in a new company is like we don't have everything figured out. But yeah, I tried to make some documentation, tried to send him a bunch of calls on what works, sat with him on all of his first 30 calls.
mm,
Transition from I led the calls, he listened, to we co-led the call, to he led the call, I listened, to he led the call and I watched the recording afterward.
mm,
So it's like a similar phase out to ramp him up. And then one of my expectations for him as we head to the next quarter was like, you need to build out a sales training program and process. And so we use Speckit, which I think is in the next quarter, but it
mhm.
basically helps us create really good, kind of sales process documentation to loop in early founding sales members.
Cool. Last question on this stage. A lot of this obviously depends on finding a great sales leader. Any learnings there on like how to find, source, validated the right sales leader for you, or questions to ask or something?
No, we got so lucky. He came inbound to us. I have zero experience hiring sales leaders, so sorry.
All good. I love that you're honest here. So Q3, seller-led sales, founder involved. You went from 30 to 60 customers roughly. Um, yeah, talk to me about this quarter. Most important things you guys did here. What stands out?
This was the most dangerous quarter for sure because things started to get scary for me because I wasn't directly interfacing every single meeting. I was like trusting somebody I had just met 4 months earlier to then train people that I had never met within a month how to sell a thing that I've been focused on for 4 years. And so, just it's a scary time.
Totally.
One of the really nice things is that Keegan had worked in prior roles with some of the new sellers that we brought on, and so he was able to kind of vouch for them and trust them, and that was helpful. But basically, he said to me, "Look, if you want to trust me as a sales leader, you gotta start to go hands off, right? You got to start to pull back a little bit. You got to start to be less involved." But it was a great quarter because it was just a total chaotic mess. We had so much to figure out, so much to do, and we really just divided and conquered a lot. And so, I was doing one-on-ones daily with the new AEs. I was, involved in building a lot of collateral. But we were like clear that like Keegan was making decisions. So it was like the AE comes back and is like, I just had a first call and they had this question. What do you think? And it was like, here's my suggestion, but like ultimately Keegan's the decider on like whether or not we want to reply this way. And we were really just sort of trying to work out the kinks. And the reps as well, like there's a ramp, right? So it's like month 0 nothing, month 2 50%, month 3 100%, at least is the way that we did ramp. And so I was just worried that we were going to spend a lot of money on these people and they weren't going to work out. And so those were all the kind of fears, but they proved to be not big fears, in no small part because our team is awesome and we got lucky and they're really, really good. But also because we were just tinkering. The other thing that I want to point out here is this difference between an AE and an ISR.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't know about the ISR role, but I think it's really smart. So you have your SDRs and your AEs, right? Your people who find the deals and people who close the deals. An ISR is a role in the middle. It's kind of like a stepping stone from SDR to AE. And an ISR is called an inbound sales rep. And they're basically the person responsible for replying to all the inbound. And so starting in Q3 was the first time that people started writing into Warmly and actually trying to book demos with us. Also, we use our own product, as you can see, for inbound,
Mm-hmm.
where essentially the moment somebody comes to our website, one of our reps will call them, like chat with them or call them and literally say hi, wave to them, interact with them, to try to book a meeting. And it works. People take meetings. And so we basically said, okay, well, the inbound sales rep, they're given a mix. They're given a mix of booked meetings to bring to the AE or close deals from inbound. And so it's kind of like SDR, 12 sales qualified opportunities a month. At ISR, 12 closed sales qualified opportunities a month, or 6 sales qualified opportunities a month and 3 closed deals, or 6 closed deals. And so it's sort of like you can sort of choose on that spectrum, but we're sort of like training this person to get ready to be an AE eventually, by giving them a testing ground over the course of a couple of quarters. And so we basically had one SDR, Nabil, one ISR, Terrence, and one AE, Catherine, and they were each proving out these roles for us, and with Keegan managing them along the way.
Any reason? I think the classic advice that people like Jason Lemkin talk about, like always hire 2 AEs or 2 SDRs at the same time so they can kind of compete with each other. You can compare apples to apples and see. Any reason you guys went with not that route, or just happened to happen that way?
It wasn't apples to apples, but we did bring on 2 people at once, and I
Right.
do recommend it. I think it's a great idea.
Interesting. The one thing that sticks out to me, conferences. Why is conferences the key experiment here? Why did you guys focus on that one?
Keegan and I disagreed on this big time. I thought conferences are dumb and that in person was stupid and we're a remote company and it wouldn't work. And he was like, trust me, in my prior roles have generated a lot of stuff from that. It actually fell on like Q3 is when a lot of conferences are hosted. The Outreach Conference, SaaStr, Salesforce Conference, a bunch of other
Mm-hmm.
conferences we went to, the Sixth Sense Conference. And so I don't know. I mean, he basically tricked me into doing it. I was like, we shouldn't do it. And he was like, trust me, trust me, trust me. Oh, I got a free pass. Let's go. And I was like, oh, fine. But I basically was like, what do you think is going to move the needle the most? And he said, conferences. And so, I trusted him. I said, okay, here's 10K. Go spend it on flights, hotels, food, and go to as many conferences as you want. And he proved me wrong. Of the 6 conferences we went to, 4 were valuable and 2 were not. And we for our particular business, we realized that Dreamforce, the like large Salesforce conference, is just too big for us. So we're not going to go to it in
Huh.
the future. And then so that we took a bet, and that one worked out. I don't think it's as good as like maximizing, let's say, the combination of omni-channel with LinkedIn and email, but it is a solid channel.
So disagree and commit. And it sounds like basically, Keegan, you guys didn't like sponsor or pay a shit ton of money for a booth. It's just like he went there because you knew a lot of your ICPs are going to be there, and he just networked the shit out of it.
Yeah, we did not want to spend any money on booths in the early days. We recently actually sponsored our first conference, the Apollo Olympus conference, and I think we paid. I don't remember what we paid, but I think we ended up getting 2 or 3x ROI on what we paid. So I think it was
Wow.
worth it ultimately. But I'm pretty skeptical on sponsoring.
Right. Interesting. All right. Q4, you are now fully removing yourself from the process. You go from 60 to 100 plus customers. You now have your AE, your ISR, and your sales leader, VP of sales run this whole process. What sticks out to you here?
So this was even more scary than Q3 because now I'm like removed from the process. But Keegan basically sat me down and he said, "Look, you and I are stepping on each other's toes. You tell the reps some stuff, and I tell them different stuff, and it's like confusing them. Max, you're great, but you're not as good as us. And let us do the thing. Like, congratulations, you're free." And I was like, "I'm a free elf? Holy shit, that's crazy." And it wasn't so simple. Like, I think I still closed some deals over the course of Q4, but like the shift was my goal is to generate new meetings for the sellers, not to carry deals over the line. And so every founder friend that reached out to me, everyone that reached out to me on LinkedIn, everyone that wanted a demo, every like opportunity I saw to snag a demo, my thought first was, can I pass this off to a rep? Or can I be the SDR now? Can I be the founder SDR or the CEO SDR? And I take the first meeting, validate that it's legit, and then say, I'm so excited to work with you. I'm going to loop in my sales rep to take it over from here. And so that was kind of the focus on the final phase was like, when I look at that closed one deal line item, all of these deals should say closed by somebody who isn't me. And if we can see sellers hitting quota and without me being there, that's very exciting and starts to get to repeatable sales process. A couple of caveats here, right, are that Q4 was the holiday quarter.
Yeah.
We actually did, I posted our revenue publicly on LinkedIn, but we actually crushed it through the holiday quarter. That may be more atypical. I think maybe it's more because like salespeople want to like spend budget and they aren't doing a lot of sales calls during the holidays. But
Mm.
it's sort of like these experiments sound great in theory, but like, what do you do with Thanksgiving? You know, like American Thanksgiving. Like, what do you do with Christmas? Like, how do you factor that into your experiments? So these are things that we had to kind of like work through. But now all of a sudden, my focus was to shift from generating demand, from closing deals and generating demand outbound to driving demand inbound. And so I'm joining my co-founder Alan now on marketing essentially. And so my job is to do podcasts like this, to post on LinkedIn, to do whatever I can to, you know, I hold myself accountable to, same as an SDR, at least 12 sales qualified opportunities per month. Um, and yeah, and that's been the main focus. That being said, in Q4 and now into Q1, I'm still on most closing calls. Like I would say myself or Keegan will join the final call just to make sure it gets over the line and to also paint the vision of the future for where we're going. And so I think that that's important, as well as like no founder should ever step away from the sales process. Like just because we have a repeatable sales motion, the next decade of my life will be in the Warmly sales and marketing department, right? Like I will never ever step back from that. Not only because it's fun and I like it, but because like I'm paying myself. And so like I can't justify my own freaking salary unless I'm closing deals left and right. And like Warmly will only succeed if we make a ton of revenue. And so that's what's going on.
Interesting. So you mentioned you are moving into marketing. You said you're holding yourself accountable to 12 SQOs per month just as an SDR. How are you guys measuring it? Is it just like a DM on LinkedIn if someone's like, yo, Max, I would love to chat with you guys. Super interesting what you do. And then it moves to SQO. What if someone goes to the website and books a demo directly, even though it, came from a LinkedIn post that they saw? How do you guys measure and attribute the
Great.
12 SQOs?
Yeah, great question. Attribution is a whole thing. And the more attribution you have to put into your processes, the more people bail because there's like too many fields to fill out. So it's like a thing that we struggle with and think through. Like I think yesterday we just added a monthly website traffic amount as one of our qualifiers on our inbound form. And then like it's a big debate because it's like, well, are we gonna like see a 20% drop off in people who fill out, but also like inbound is less qualified. So maybe we should do a bunch of qualification questions. I don't know. Anyway, we are very in our HubSpot. We have like a very clear delineation of like, and I think I may not have screenshotted it for the growth on Hinge post, but I'm happy to send it. But it's like every deal has a associated AE and an associated SDR, and so yeah, I may not have included it in there, but basically the associated SDR needs to be max, and SQO means that you like there's the stages are meeting booked, meeting held, and then SQO. And there's you can stay in meeting held for a while because an SQO can only happen once you have a decision maker on the call who expresses what we call the 3 whys. Basically, why do anything? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Why buy Warmly, which is what, like, why do you think we're the right solution? Why not just pay a sales agency? And then why now, which is like, what's the urgency driving you wanting to purchase this? And so if those 3 things are true, then they can go into the sales qualified opportunity bucket. And so that's how we think about SQO. And so my name has to be the SDR on that, which means I've had to, like, say I either took the first meeting or I looped in the AE to build the deal, take the deal forward. And separately, I do a bunch of LinkedIn stuff to generate inbound. And then you can, if they write on the form, like, how'd you hear about us? And it says LinkedIn.
Okay. Self-reported.
Loosely, I get credit, but like, I don't need, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's mostly about like hard outbound SQOs.
And so those are inbounds that come to your DM or email, or how do you end up having the first meeting as an SDR?
I send email sequences. I look on
Okay.
LinkedIn and find people talking about stuff. I use Warmly to look up leads. I mean, I'm hitting the pavements looking for deals. So if you know anybody, then reach out. But I would say, like, just through my founder network, like, I probably get 4 or 5 emails or LinkedIn DMs a month where people are like, you know, you and I have known each other for a while. We're ready for a sales automation platform. Like, let's talk. And so, you know, I'm lucky in that regard. But I'm also sourcing my own deals outbound.
Cool. Yeah, interesting. I don't know if you remember, I commented on these Q5 founder-led marketing basically, and basically
It was
making
great.
you a thought leader on LinkedIn. I'm curious, that post that you posted that we're now breaking down here, that went viral. You got like over 1,000 likes, 200 comments, 30 shares. I know that you had that newsletter that we talked about featured you. Have you guys been able to attribute or quantify what this post might have done for Warmly in terms of leads or SQOs or something?
Well, first of all, I just want you to know, like, Q5, aka this quarter right now, I'm following the Fin method. I mean, I basically just took what you wrote here, and that's what I'm focused on.
Let's go.
So thank you for that. But no, I mean, like, we definitely doubled inbound. I think, like, we maybe had like, yeah, maybe we're getting like 6 inbound a day, and then now we're getting, like, that day we got like 12 or something. So it definitely drove some. It's really hard to quantify that stuff. LinkedIn does a really bad job of kind of attribution and stuff like that. You know, tons of comments, tons of visibility. It's got to help us out somewhat. But no, I mean, it's this, I don't know, marketing is a shady and weird world. Like, it's difficult to know just how much attribution we got from it.
Right. You got to hard out. Otherwise, I would just ask you what's next for you guys.
Well, what's next is trying to go from 1 million to 4 million in ARR over the course of 2024, and then posting publicly on LinkedIn every day, full transparency, our metrics, our numbers, everything. We're going to be the first sales SaaS startup in the world to go clear, which means that we're going to build in public 100% of.
That's amazing. Very cool. All right, I'm excited to keep following your journey. Thank you so much, Max, for taking the time here.